Hello, this is Mark LaRochelle from Productive Computing and Productive Computing University. Thanks for joining us on this video. If you've ever wanted to create a sample database or sample records in a database for use in demonstrating a new product that you have, or even just working with containers so that you can demonstrate to those users what it might look like if it was populated with imagery, then this is the video for you. I'll show you how to get started and we will build it from scratch or nearly from scratch. So I have here a file on my desktop. I'm calling it PCI Image Generator. And it's a simple file that you can get from Productive Computing University in our free files and resources course. In that course, there's a bunch of things you can download for free. This will be yet another one to add to the pile of good little tools and tips and tricks and free files to help you on your way as a FileMaker developer. So let's talk about this. I'm going to open this up with FileMaker 21. That's the latest as of this recording. And although I say we're starting from scratch, I do have a file with a few things in it. I have one field. It's an image field. It's a container type field called image. And then I have a button bar with 3 buttons that aren't yet really assigned, and nothing more than a header and some marketing stuff so you can find out more information about our company and how to get this file. All right, so under the hood, if I go to Script Workspace, I have an opening script, which triggers when opening, and a closing script, which triggers on closing, although there's nothing in the closing script. And then these are support scripts for the buttons you just saw on the previous screen there. And then a utility script, which purges all the data in the file. I have this here just to make it convenient for us so that we can remove any images we had in our demo, clear all the data so that we can distribute the file to you guys empty. And then finally, this little gem of a script called center window. This will actually open the file. Well, it'll center the window when the file opens. This is called from the opening script. It's a great little helper script if you want to center the file when it opens. Okay, so that's the groundwork. In other words, there's really nothing up my sleeve. We're going to start from scratch here. So we are going to need a website to help us. These pictures aren't going to come from thin air. And you'll be happy to know that such a website exists where we can actually tap into this and pull images directly into our container field. The name of the website is called Lorem Pixum, and it's a place for photos. And to use it, it's really this simple. You just call this URL and you specify the width and the height in pixels, and then you get a random image. And there's all kinds of options here. So let me go through a few of the options because we may put a few of these options here in our demo file so we can capitalize on that and learn some things along the way. So we can do square images by putting in just a single size. Then you can specify a particular image by its ID. And then if you're wondering, well, how do I know the ID? There is another page that they direct you to where you can click here and you can see the image gallery. And these are all the images. There's over 900, between 900 and 1,000 images that they've pulled for us to pull from. And there's the ID right here. So if you liked picture number 17 by Paul Jarvis, you could always specify picture number 17 and have that throughout. Maybe you want to do a demonstration of different sizes of 17, or maybe you want to do a demonstration where 17 is grayscale in one image, color in another. Maybe you want to play with cropping or just experiment in general. There's a good reason to have a particular ID. Or maybe you have 10 or so that you like and you only want those 10 to ever be picked, but you still want to be picked randomly. Then you can put those IDs in a rotating list and then pull them randomly like that. So that's the image gallery. But if I go back here and look at some of the other options, we can see that I will not be pulling by a specific ID. I want them to be completely random each time. Speaking of random or non-random, this is a way to make it static. You add the word seed in your URL, and that will pull the same image every time, over and over, all the time. Now, it's not the same image that you see here necessarily. Once you pull it once, they sense what browser you're pulling that from, and if you use the word seed, it'll pull that same image from that point forward. But if you roll out of bed on Monday and you call this URL, it'll be one image. If you do it on Tuesday, it'll be another image altogether because things change. That's my assumption. Okay. Then there's the grayscale option. We just need to put a question mark and the word grayscale at the end, and then we'll pull the same image, but grayscale. Then we have the option to do blur. So question mark blur. And then you can even choose the blur amount, 1 to 10. So blur equals 2 would be a 2 amount of blur. Then we have an advanced option, which we won't do here. We're not going to be pulling multiple pictures at the same time, but we could incorporate more than one item at the same time, like we could do grayscale and blur at the same time by just including it in the URL. So we can see here that just by using a simple URL, we can pull an image. And you can prove that just by copying the URL to your clipboard. And I'll go to a new browser and then paste it. And then when I paste it, there's my random image. Now, if I were to refresh the browser, not changing the URL at all, or putting it in a second time, there's another image, and then another image, and then another image. Now, you'll notice that when I put in the root URL here, that's the request to go get the picture. But when the picture actually comes back, it is transformed, if you will, or redirected to the actual photo. So that's an important aspect of what's happening here. We have a pseudo API that is transforming or redirecting midstream. In other words, the URL I'm requesting isn't the final URL for that image. It's just a requesting URL. So that's an important thing, and we'll talk about where we need to put that in our curl options when we call this. Okay, so let's start at the basics. We will take a look here. We'll create a new script, and we'll assign it to button 1. So I'll go into script workspace, and I'm doing that through a quick key. I'm using Command-Shift-S, and then you can use Control-Shift-S if you're on Windows. But I'll create a new script, and I'll put it in a brand new folder called Images. All right, and then we'll create a new script. And we'll call it Pull Image. I could call it gather image, or I could call it populate image, but I'll call it pull image. So the script step we want to use is called insert from URL, which makes sense because we're talking about inserting an image and we have a URL on file, or on hand, I should say. All right, now here we have some options. We can do it with or without a dialog. I'm going to keep the default option here to say dialog off. We don't need to see the dialog at this time, but I will click on the gear icon here, or the configuration icon, and the target. Okay, so the target will be what we want to populate. So that's going to be the image field. That's what we want to populate. And then the URL is what I pasted on my clipboard, just like that. So let's start simple. Make sure we have this in quotes, although if I didn't put the quotes here, it would automatically put it in there for me. Keep the automatic encode URL. It doesn't really apply in this case because we're not putting any spaces in our URL or any strange characters that need to be encoded at the moment, but for now, just leave it just like this. And then that's all there is to it. Now, I had mentioned earlier that we are being redirected. So there's a special command that we need to put here in our curl options. And that command is, I'm going to put a quote here because it needs to be -- location and then end quote. Without that curl command, our URL will not be directed and we'll end up getting nothing back. Now, how did I know that? Well, I actually didn't know that. I started looking at ChatGPT and asking questions about this particular website and about what might be wrong. And I simply said, when I put in this URL using FileMaker insert from URL script step, it's not working. And then it said, well, it could be because it's being redirected. And if that's the case, put this in the curl options. And voila, I put that in the curl options and it works. So yes, even though I have a lot of API experience and integration with all kinds of APIs over the last 4 or 5 years, I still occasionally need help or guidance or a trigger to say, oh yeah, of course it's redirecting. I need to put that curl command in there. So what I'm saying is you can still use things like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and other AI helpers as a developer. I don't think there's any shame in helping learn things using those options, and that's what I did here. Okay, so that's it. Now let me do one other good housekeeping thing. Let's just commit the records so that it seals the deal, makes the record solid with a commit. And then the other thing I like to do is exit script, even though there's really no result that I'm looking for and I really don't need an exit script because it'll exit automatically. The reason I keep this here is because when I'm running scripts through debugger, it's nice to not have the script. It's nice to be able to see the results of the last script step that I care about. In this case, the commit records. I want to make sure that that works. So the only way to keep the debugger open is to have yet another script step at the tail end of your script so that you can analyze it if you wanted to have the data viewer open or what have you. So that's why I put an exit script here. I learned that from one of our advanced employees here at Productive Computing. Incidentally, it was a great tip, and now I use it for everything. Okay, so there's that. Now I should be putting comments in here. We should probably be putting checks to make sure that I'm in browse mode and a bunch of other housekeeping items. But for now, let's just keep this simple, do that, and then let's assign our button. So I'll go to the button here and make sure that performs a script called pull image. There we go, back to browse mode and test it. And it doesn't work. All right, I think the reason this didn't work is because I don't actually have a record created. So let me create a new record, give it some place to put it, and let's try that again. There we go. All right, let me try it again, and it should be another new random picture. And every time I click on this, it'll be a new picture, 200 by 200 or whatever I specified, actually 200 by 300. All right, so let me just name this button. I'll double click that and call pull image. All right, so now let's give us the option to change the size of the image dynamically by a field specification. So what I'd like to do next is then put a width and a height field here so that we can add that into our URL. So I'll go into Manage Database and we'll add two more fields. We'll call it G width and G height. Now I say G because I want them to be a global field. The reason I want them to be a global field because if I add a new record, I don't want to have to re-enter the width and the height. I want it to be persistent across all records. So I'll make this a global field, and then I'll select the same with the width and go to options and go to global field, which is called global storage. That's the actual option, and you find that under the storage tab here. All right, so now that those are both global, I can push OK and then present them on the layout. So I'll jump into layout mode here. Let's see, where do we want them? I want them at the top, I think. And I want the width first because that's the first number and the height is the second number. So we'll be consistent so that we have kind of awareness of which number is first and second. Okay. So now I'll put in some random numbers here. Well, maybe not so random. I'll do 500 by 500. Make it a little bigger, fill more of the container. In fact, if I jump into see the container size here, yeah, we're already at a 538 and a 481 by default. I think I'd want that to be a little bit more consistent. Why don't we do 500 by 500? That way we just have some evenness to it all, and then I'll adjust this tab control a little bit so that it fits it nicer. Okay, so now we've got a 500 workspace, and we're going to specify that. Now we just need to adjust it so that our URL grabs those numbers and puts it here as part of the calculation. So I'll go and adjust this in the script, and we'll go to where we specify the URL, and I'll click on specify so we can get into the full calc dialog. And we need 200/300, or in other words, we need this to be hard-coded, and then I'll put an ampersand, and we'll grab the width, and then we'll put another ampersand, and then put a quote /quote, which brings those two together in the URL the way it needs to be. Another ampersand, and we'll do the height. So now we've got the width and the height dynamically added to that URL based on what we specify. So now the next time I pull this image, it'll pull in 500 by 500. Here's the World Trade Center. And another one will be some sort of a scene here, and then one more. Now you'll notice that it took a little longer to populate that because the image is bigger, so there's more information that needs to go over the wire back into FileMaker. But it presents pretty well. So that's 500 by 500. So if we wanted to add the grayscale option, we can do that. Why don't we add that in? Let's refer to our website on how we do that again. So for that, I'm back to the main website. We simply put a question mark and the word grayscale at the tail end of the URL. Okay, so question mark grayscale. And I think what we want to do is, why don't we present this as a checkbox, where it's grayscale if it's checked, and if it's not checked, it isn't grayscale. So I'll put in G grayscale, And we'll make it a number field so that it can be Boolean with options of 1 or empty. And I'll make that a global just like we did with the other two, called G grayscale. And then I'll present that on the layout right here. And I'll put the word grayscale, but then this will be a little smaller because it will be presented as a checkbox. In order to do that, I'll need a value list. So I'll highlight this, go to this last option here, and we'll go to a checkbox set. And the value lists will need to be created. So I'll click on the pencil icon and do that right now. And we'll call this, normally I call it Boolean, because Boolean standing for like a 0 or a 1. But I won't include 0, I'll just include the 1. In other words, 1 is checked, empty is not checked. All right, so I'll adjust this slightly and move it around. Now I've got a nice little checkbox here, so if I click it, it'll either be grayscale or not. Now we just need to put some more smarts into our URL, so I'll go back into the script and we'll target this again, and I will select the URL, and we'll go back into specify so we can see what this is all about. Then we'll put a statement here that puts an ampersand, and then we'll need a case statement because it's an either or situation. So we can say case G grayscale equals 1. Then we'll put in the text $grayscale. And then we'll close that case statement. So in other words, this first part of the calculation will always be running, and then it'll join it with this part of the calculation, which will either be $grayscale, or it won't be. It'll be blank. And if it's blank, that's fine. The URL will end here. Otherwise, it'll put $grayscale, simply because that grayscale indicator is a 1 from that field. So that's it for that. We're done with that. Now I'll save this script and we'll test it. So first without grayscale. That doesn't look great to me, but then I'll add the grayscale. And now we've got a grayscale image, still 500 by 500. Okay, so those are some basic options. Let's do something else. Let's create a loop so that we can populate X amount of records. So let's give the user the ability to create X amount of records, but not necessarily the ability to create more than 100 or maybe more than 20. Just to keep it simple, you can adjust this on your end. But let's do that now. So I'll create yet another global field. So I'll go into Manage Database, and I'll call it gCount. And we'll make that a number field. And we'll go to Options here and make it a global. Okay, and then we'll present that on our layout. And I think I'll put this over here like this. I like the size of that. It's not too bad. And we'll do gCount. We'll create a label for it and then remove the height label. Okay. gCount. All right. And then I'll put in, let's say, 10 here for now. Keep it simple. And let me center this a little bit and make it a little smaller just so it fits better. Okay. There's our count. And normally, if I was presenting this to a user, I wouldn't use the word or the letter G. That's silly. You don't want a user to have to see that. That's more for us when we named it, but it took that name because that was the original field name. Okay, so now we've got the G count. So why don't we present an option to loop and create one record for every new image based on the total count that they want. That way you can kind of grab images en masse. And then you'll learn a little bit about basic looping here and some of the things about a custom dialog and so forth. So what I'll do is I'll create a brand new script because I like this script by itself, creating a single image when you click the button. But I think we need a new script to pull multiple images. So I'll duplicate the script. Well, actually, I don't want to duplicate the script. I just want to start from scratch, and we'll call this pull multiple images. There. The first thing we should present the user is the option to how many images, because we don't know necessarily what they will want. So I'll just say show custom dialog. And we'll say choose, well, let me leave that blank and I'll just say choose the image, the number of images to make. Okay. Now we'll leave the cancel button here because sometimes when you present a user with a question, they're not ready to answer it. It's like, oh, I don't know, let me find out. So they'll hit cancel, so they don't want to go through with the routine until they find out what the right answer is. So cancel, I'll leave there. We'll push OK to accept that. But we'll also go here under input fields and take advantage of that field we just created by showing that as an input field, allowing the user to type directly in the custom dialog. So I'll click show on that, and we'll pick the G count field, and we'll say records is the label for it. And it will pull that field, and this will make more sense once you see it. Let me just add some logic here. I'll do an if statement or an if script step, and we'll say get last message choice, which will look at the dialog and how it was answered. And if it equals 2, which is the cancel option, we'll immediately exit the script. That way the user can always cancel by clicking cancel. And then if it isn't 2 as the option, which means it's okay, option number 1, we won't even address it. We'll just let the script continue. So a lot of times I'll do that. I'll make the only part of that dialog that I worry about is the cancel, exit right away, and then we'll continue on, especially if there's only 2 choices. Okay, so that's done. Let's just see what that looks like so you can see, and then we'll assign it to a button too. So I'll go into layout mode, click on button 2, and I'll say pull multiple. Okay. And that needs to be assigned to the new script. So I'll double click that and assign it to perform the script, pull multiple images. Okay. So now when I push on this, it's giving me the option to do any number of records. It's pulling from the amount that's already there in the field. So they're sort of linked. So if I put in 5 here and pushed OK, the 5 would end up going back into the global count, which is fine. Now, what I'd probably do here as well is I would have this file open up so that it has default values. So I'd probably go default 500 by 500, grayscale off, and then count to, let's say, 10. So I'll do that now just for good measure. When it goes to the layout and after it adjusts and centers the window, I'll have it set the field for the G width and height to 500. Okay, there's the width, there's the height, and then we'll do the other thing, which is the count. Let's do 10. There. And then I probably should commit records. Whenever you populate data, it's always a good idea to commit, even though it's implied in many ways, but it technically won't commit unless I put this commit there, change the layout, or go to another record. So that is good there. So now when that opens up, and I'll just fire that here right now, those are our default values. In fact, I'll probably have it set the grayscale to blank in case it was checked when the file was closed, because globals will maintain their value if you're running it as a single user not being served. So we'll do G grayscale, and we will set that to blank. So blank is 2 quotes, just like that. Now I'll run that, and that should look just like that when it opens from now on. The other thing I want to do is I want to prevent against the count being too high. So what we ought to do is after we analyze the value for the dialog, then we'll immediately check if the count is too high. So we'll do an if, and we'll say G count is greater than, let's say, we'll put in an arbitrary 25, or greater than, if it's greater than 25, we'll show a custom dialog. And we'll say image count between 1 and 25. And then we'll give them just an OK button, and we'll exit out of this like that. Okay, so that's our validation for this, and now we're ready to actually do the loop. So I'll stay here and do the loop. So for the first part of the loop, we'll want to create a new record so that we have a place for our new image. And then we will perform the script, pull image. And that will be our subscript, because as of right now, that will do everything that we need it to do. We don't need to write all that code all over again. So new image, new image, new image, new image, and it'll come in one after another. Now it's just a matter of how we exit. So we already know that we want to exit the loop when the count equals the number of times we've run the loop. So I'll say exit loop if the G count equals $I. Now, I haven't specified $I, but I'm about to. And I'll do that at the first part of the script here. We'll set a variable, and we'll do $I and $I plus 1. Okay. So it will go through, it'll ask the basic question. We'll double check that the amount is viable or feasible. Then we'll start our loop. We'll set the variable counter to 1 because it'll be nothing, and then 1 will be the value of that. We'll create a new record. We'll go and do the work, and then we'll continue on this. We check it to make sure that the 1 doesn't equal the G count, which it doesn't. So it'll keep going until the 1 does equal the G count. It'll exit the loop, and then that's all we need. I would normally be inclined to say, oh, don't we need a commit for the last record after the loopers run? No, because the commit is over here every time we run this. So that's all there is to it. Let's give this a try. I'm going to start simple here and go to 4. And I already have 1 image, so when I pull multiple, it should pull another 4, giving us a total of 5. And there we do. And there we have our 5 images. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like that. Excellent. So if we wanted some smaller images, 100 by 100, and I wanted to pull, let's say, 15, I can pull 15 images in like that. Great. So you can see where this would be very easy to populate a collage worth of images for your FileMaker system. I don't know if there's any limiters built in where if you did 1,000, would it complain about that? But it's just a great way to populate your FileMaker file with, decent images, random, hopefully non-destructive images that would work well for sample data, and save you from having to go hunt over the internet to find your own sample images over and over and over again, or to use the same image for 1,000 records, which is equally as uninspiring for the person watching this or looking at the sample data you've created. So there you have it. So to get this file, to download it so you can explore it on your own, you can go to productivecomputinguniversity.com. You can use the search box here and just put in the word free, and then all our free courses will show up. I believe this is on page 2 as of this recording, so let me go here, and there it is, FileMaker features and free resources. If you were to go in here, you will see a ton of free options, add-ons, all kinds of things. We've been doing this since the FileMaker 17 days, and there's just a lot of great stuff you can take advantage of. 78 lessons so far and counting. And most of those lessons, or a lot of those lessons, have demo files you can download and learn a particular lesson just like we've done here today. Thanks for joining us on this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Give a like, and thanks for watching.